The night Gotham was born wasn't marked by a ribbon cutting or a mayor's speech. It was marked by the echo of 2 gunshots in a filthy alley, the clatter of pearls on wet pavement, and the piercing scream of a child. We all know that story, the one they tell in sanitized comic panels and blockbuster films. But the real story, the one that truly birthed the Bat, is much, much darker. It's not a story about a hero's calling. It's a story about a ghost's haunting. For years, the boy, Bruce Wayne, was a phantom in his own home. Alfred would leave food outside his door, only to find it untouched hours later. The manor, once filled with laughter, became a mausoleum. Bruce didn't spend his days training or studying. He spent them reliving that moment. He would trace the crime scene photos with his fingers, memorize the splatter patterns on the brick, and listen to the audio recording of his own scream until it was just white noise. He wasn't mourning his parents. He was dissecting their final moments, trying to find a logic, a reason, in the absolute chaos of their end. He didn't find one. And that absence of reason became his new religion. The world wasn't just, it wasn't fair. It was a predator, and the innocent were its prey. This wasn't a noble realization. It was a cold, hard, and deeply cynical truth that settled in his bones like a permanent winter. The world didn't need a hero. It needed a new kind of predator, one that hunted other predators. His journey abroad wasn't a grand tour of mastering martial arts from wise monks. It was a descent into the world's darkest corners. He didn't just learn to fight, he learned to inflict pain. He spent months in a black site prison, not as a guest, but as an inmate, learning the language of brutality. He shadowed assassins in the neon-drenched alleys of Tokyo, not to stop them, but to understand their cold detachment. He learned interrogation from fallen spies in Eastern Europe, mastering the art of breaking a person's will not with fists, but with fear and psychological torment. He wasn't building a hero, he was forging a weapon. He learned how to disappear in a crowd, how to use the shadows not just as cover, but as a tangible force. He studied anatomy not to heal, but to know exactly where to strike for maximum impact, to disable, to terrorize. He pushed his body to the absolute limit, not for peak physical condition, but to turn it into an instrument of relentless, unyielding punishment. He was hollowing himself out, piece by piece, and filling the void with something else. Something cold. Something terrifying. When he finally returned to Gotham, he wasn't the prodigal son. He was a stranger, wearing a familiar face. The city he remembered was gone, replaced by a festering wound of corruption that ran from the grimy sewers to the penthouses of the elite. The police were bought, the politicians were puppets, and the criminals, like Carmine operated with the impunity of kings. They were a cancer, and a scalpel wasn't going to be enough. Gotham needed chemotherapy, a scorched earth approach. One night, sitting in his father's study, staring into the abyss of his own reflection, a bat shattered the window. It wasn't an omen. It wasn't a sign from the heavens. In that moment of stark terror, the creature flapping wildly in the dim light, Bruce didn't see a symbol of hope. He saw a reflection of what he had become. A creature of the night, a primal, terrifying force that strikes from the darkness and instills a fear so deep it paralyzes its victims. The decision was made. He wouldn't be Bruce Wayne, the philanthropist. That was just a mask. He would become the fear he felt in that alley. He would become the thing that criminals whisper about in hushed, terrified tones. He wasn't putting on a costume to protect the innocent. He was putting on armor to wage a one-man war. The symbol on his chest wasn't a beacon of hope for the people of Gotham. It was a brand. A warning to the wicked. A promise that the darkness that took his parents was now coming for them. The first time he went out, it wasn't a clean, heroic takedown. It was brutal, messy. He didn't just stop a mugging. He systematically dismantled the criminals, breaking bones, shattering their confidence, and leaving them whimpering wrecks. He wanted the message to be clear. This wasn't justice. This was retribution. He moved through the city not like a guardian angel, but like a plague. His presence was a chilling whisper on the wind, a shadow that flickered at the edge of your vision. The myth of the Batman wasn't born from gratitude. It was born from fear. Criminals started looking over their shoulders, terrified of the night. The stories they told each other weren't of a hero, but of a monster. A demon that stalked the rooftops. A ghost that couldn't be reasoned with, couldn't be bought, and couldn't be stopped. And in the silence of his cave, surrounded by the cold hum of his technology, Bruce Wayne finally found his purpose. He could never bring his parents back. He could never erase that night, but he could take the absolute chaos that created him and aim it like a weapon. He couldn't save his own soul, but he could use its damnation to terrorize those who prey on the weak. The man died in that alley with his parents. What was left is an idea. A terrible, necessary idea. The idea of the Batman. This isn't a story of a man who chose to be a hero. It's the story of a ghost who haunts the city that created him, forever reenacting his own tragedy by ensuring no one else has to suffer the same fate. It's a much darker path, but for Gotham, it might be the only one that leads back to the light. Thanks so much for watching and diving into this darker take with me. If you enjoyed this exploration, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. Let me know your thoughts on this origin story in the comments below. See you next time.